Hello everyone. Today I will be presenting our work on neural architecture search, which is titled as Evolving Neural Architecture Using One-Shot Model. There are four parts in my presentation, which includes introduction, our proposed method, experimental results, and lastly concluding remarks. So the problem of neural architecture search is that we want to automatically search for architectures of neural networks for a specific task. In our work, the neural network is created by cascading two types of cells, normal cell and reduction cell. And the job of the neural architecture search is to search for these cells, as shown here. Any neural architecture search algorithm involves architecture evaluation during the search process. This is the bottleneck part of most algorithms as it normally involves training the architecture from scratch for a certain number of epochs. This ultimately leads to large search time. This can be seen here in this plot. The y-axis is the accuracy of the architectures from various evolution-based methods, and the x-axis is the search time of the algorithms given in GPU days, meaning the number of days used by a single GPU for running the algorithm. As mentioned in the previous slide, we can see that the previous evolution-based algorithms takes very long time for the search process. In comparison, our method reduces the search time significantly while achieving better results. Our proposed method has multiple parts, which can be divided into these three parts: architecture representation, decoding architecture parameter, and evolutionary algorithm. The evolutionary algorithm is further divided into mutation operation and crossover operation. Now, for the architecture representation, we want to search for the cells, and the cell is made up of nodes. For example, let's say there are four nodes in a cell, as shown here, which are connected to each other with different operations available in the search space. In our method, we used one-shot model to represent the architectures. One-shot model is the supergraph which treats all the architectures as a subgraph. Now the architecture is represented by an architecture parameter called alpha, which is basically a 2D matrix. The columns represents the operations in the search space. Here for illustration we have considered three operations in the search space. The row in the matrix represents the edges between two nodes. The entries in the matrix represents the weights given to an operation. For example, let's look at the entry alpha 0, 1. This represents the edge between nodes 0 and 1, and the entries represents the weights given to the three operations in the search space. So, if we look at the edge between those nodes in the one-shot model, we see three arrows with different colors representing the three operations in the search space, and the thickness of the arrow represents the weights associated with that operation. Clearly, the red arrow has the largest thickness owing to the weights associated with the operation 1. Now, how do we derive an architecture from this architecture parameter alpha? This is done by selecting the operations with the highest weights between the two nodes. For example, between node 0 and 1, operation 1 is selected because it has the largest weight. Similarly, between node 1 and node 3, operation 3 is selected. Next is the decoding architecture parameter. As shown earlier, the one-shot model is the supergraph containing all architectures as the subgraph. The decoding architecture parameter is used to select an architecture in the one-shot model. Let's say we want to select this particular architecture in the one-shot model. First, we will create another architecture parameter, basically a 2D matrix. This is the decoding architecture parameter alpha bar. This is created by putting 1 for those edges which are present in the architecture, otherwise put 0. For example, there is a red arrow between node 0 and 1, so we put 1 in alpha bar 0, 1 and OP1 entry. Whereas there are no edges between node 0 and node 2, so all the entries of alpha bar 0, 2 will be 0. The rest of the matrix is created this way. After that, the created alpha bar is copied to the architecture parameter of the one-shot model. This is the process of selecting an architecture in the one-shot model. The whole process can be thought of as giving higher weights to the particular architecture as compared to the other architectures. Lastly, the evolutionary algorithm has two parts: mutation operation and crossover operation. In the mutation operation, we use a mutation weight to check if we want to mutate the edge between any two nodes. In this example, we consider three nodes with its corresponding architecture parameter shown at the bottom. Let's say we decide to mutate the edge between node 0 and node 2, that is alpha 02. This is done by resampling the raw from a uniform distribution, which changes the corresponding edges between the nodes. This is noticed with the change in the thickness of the arrows between node 0 and node 2. For the crossover operation, we use two parents to create a child architecture. We use tournament selection for selecting the parents. The tournament selection involves randomly selecting some individuals from the population. Then, the best individual in terms of fitness is selected as the parent 1. We repeat the whole process again to get the parent 2. Now that we have two parents, we will combine them to get the child architecture. The child architecture is created by combining the alphas of the parents randomly. As shown here, the rows in the architecture parameter of the child are randomly copied from the parents. Now I will discuss the whole process involved in our method called EV-Nash. It starts with a population of random architecture parameter alphas. Then we train the one-shot model. The training is done using training data, population, and stochastic gradient descent. First, we convert the architecture alpha 1 to its corresponding decoding architecture parameter alpha bar 1. Then we copy it to the one-shot model. This is basically a process of selecting the architecture alpha 1 in the one-shot model. Then, the stochastic gradient descent optimizes the one-shot model using the first batch of the training data. Then we repeat it again for the next training batch. That is, convert alpha 2 to its corresponding decoding architecture parameter alpha bar 2, copy it to the one-shot model, then train it on the next training batch. This is continued until all the training batches are finished. If we reach the end of the population, then we go to the start of the population again. After training, we evaluate the population to get the fitness of each individual architecture in the population. Here, first alpha 1 is converted to its corresponding decoding architecture parameter alpha bar 1, which is copied to the one-shot model. This is for selecting the architecture alpha 1 in the one-shot model. The accuracy of the one-shot model on the validation data is used as the fitness of the architecture. We repeat the same process for the next individual. This is done until we finish evaluating all the individuals in the population. After evaluation, we evolve the population to get the next generation population. This is done using both mutation and crossover operations discussed earlier. Here we also use elitism wherein the best fitness individual is copied without any change to the new population. Then we check if we reach the stopping criteria, which is basically if we reach the maximum epoch or not. If not, go back to training one-shot model and repeat the cycle again. If yes, then output the architecture with the best fitness. For the experimental results, we apply our method to two different search spaces, S1 and S2. In S1, we search for both normal and reduction cells, and there are 8 different operations in the search space. We search the architecture on CIFAR10 dataset, which is then transferred to CIFAR100 dataset. The results are given in terms of test error, so lower the value the better it is. As seen here, on comparing to previous evolution-based methods, our method outperforms them. This is achieved while using significantly less computational resources. On transferring the searched architecture on CIFAR10 to the ImageNet dataset, we get similar results. Now, for the search space S2, we only search for the normal cell, and the number of operations considered here is 5. This reduces the size of the search space as compared to previous search space S1. We search the architecture on CIFAR10, CIFAR100, and ImageNet 16120 datasets. The results are reported in terms of accuracy, so higher the value the better it is. Here also, our method outperforms other gradient-based methods, except G-. But the performance of the G- method reduces when the size of the search space increases, as shown here, for the search space S1. We also perform some ablation study to determine the effects of various parts of our method. When we do not use the decoding architecture parameter alpha bar in our method, we found that our method shows some randomness due to the noise introduced during the fitness estimation. When we use only mutation operation for the evolution part, our method behaves more like a random search. Here, x-axis is the epoch number and the y-axis is the test accuracy of the best architecture in the population. On using crossover operation for the evolution part, our method converges really fast and is prone to getting stuck in the local optimum due to the selection pressure. On combining both mutation and crossover together, we found that the mutation acts as the exploration part and crossover acts as the exploitation part of our method. This helps us solving the overfitting problem of the gradient descent methods. As can be seen from the figure, the gradient-based method suffers from the overfitting problem, wherein the algorithm prematurely converges to a local optimum. In comparison, our method does not get stuck in the local optimum due to its stochastic nature. Finally, for the concluding remarks, our paper presents an efficient way of applying a simple genetic algorithm to the neural architecture search problem. We also reduce the search time significantly as compared to other evolution-based methods using one-shot model, as the one-shot model shares weights among all the architectures. We also solve the overfitting problem that was introduced in the gradient-based methods. Thank you for your attention.